Hey, what's up, VC? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel, and it's time for another hard rock and heavy metal update. I've got to begin by apologizing. It's been a while since I did my last video. As I mentioned before, we had a flood in the house last month, and it caused quite a bit of damage, about $25,000 in damage. And I've been just busy as heck trying to get everything fixed. Dealing with contractors, dealing with the insurance, all that fun stuff. And I've been doing a lot of the work myself as well to save money here and there so that we can get a little nicer stuff and a little more stuff done with that money, stretch it a little bit more. So, but I do have some stuff to show here. With the contractors being in the house a lot, I've looked for chances to get away, and I've found some really good deals. Out digging, checking out places I've never been to before, stuff like that. So, but ran across some really killer stuff. So let's just kind of get started. This first one I grabbed was a kind of a blind buy. I bought it based on the look of the band members, and it was a great buy. This is 1978. Yeah, 1978. This is Liar, Set the World on Fire. This is a kick-ass album. Really good 70s hard rock. The guitar on this album is killer. I really like the vocals and the vocalist. Just a really good album, front to back. I had never heard of this band, and so I did a little research on it. I was really surprised to find they started out on Decca. Decca sold their contract to Bearsville because they thought it was a little bit heavy for Decca. It didn't quite fit in with Decca's lineup. So they got on Bearsville, released this second album, and then they went on a worldwide tour with Styx in 78 or 79. And apparently this album was all over the radio. From what I read, this is the #3 most played album of the year. I believe it was of 78. Who was it behind? Behind Dylan and The Who, I think. Who Are You? And one of the Dylan albums were #1 and 2. This was the 3rd most played album of the year. And that really shocked me that I had never heard of these songs after hearing that. And then I kind of heard the story. They were getting a lot of recognition from the radio. People were really looking at them. They were moving up the charts. So Bearsville Records decided, hey, let's pull them from the Styx tour and have them headline their own tour. I guess they decided to put them in the studio to record another album first. And then something happened, and all of a sudden they stopped getting radio play. People stopped buying their albums. A lot of people think that pulling them off of the Styx tour really hurt them. But they recorded the 3rd album, and it was never released. So hopefully we see that pop up over the next few years. I would love to hear that. But if you run across a copy of this, grab it. It's just, like I said, really killer 70s hard rock. And then before we go any further, in the background we're listening to Liberty or Death from Gravedigger. I really need to get some more Gravedigger on vinyl. I think pretty much all of their albums are on vinyl now. There may be one or two from the 90s that aren't yet, but Gravedigger, just killer power metal band. This was a German pressing of the CD. You can't go wrong with Gravedigger. Even the one album where they changed their name to Digger was still a really good album in my opinion. Not as good as the Gravedigger stuff, but if you run across anything by Gravedigger, just grab it. Next up, Lace and Whiskey from Alice Cooper. This is an album that has some really good songs and some really bad ones. He was trying to change his image here, from what I understand, go more mainstream. Lace and Whiskey, King of the Silver Screen. There's 4 or 5 really killer songs on this album. And then the rest of it's just okay. Definitely a departure from that 70s sound, but still worth having in the collection nonetheless. I still think it's a good album. Next up, this is an album that I had never owned. I've never owned it in any format. I knew a couple of the songs. I can't really say why I never bought it. I owned the band's second and third albums on cassette and then CD, but just always passed this one by. But this is Dirty, Rotten, Stinking, Filthy Rich from Warrant. Good album. It's not near as good as Cherry Pie was, but there's still some good stuff on here. Heaven and Down Boys are probably the biggest hits on here. Still a good album though, but like I said, if you're not familiar with this album, you're only familiar with Cherry Pie, this one's not near as good. But it still is a good album and worth having in the collection if you find it. I wouldn't pay big money for it, but it's still worth having in the collection. Next up, we have this is one of my all-time favorite death metal bands, and this is probably the second the death metal band I listened to the second most back in the 90s, and unfortunately, they don't get a lot of credit for as good as they were. But this is the third album from Master, Collection of Souls. This is a recent repress on Dementia Records. Just a killer album, really thick. I don't know if you can see how thick the jacket is there. Really well done though, which I think it was just on black vinyl, but let me check. No. And it's on this really nice gray sparkle vinyl. Again, Master is just a killer band. This is a good band if you're not real heavy into death metal. They were definitely on the thrashier side, especially this album. They were definitely on that thrashier side of death metal though, and these guys are a lot more accessible than a lot of the other death metal of the early to mid 90s. This next one, this was I read a couple of reviews on this, and I also listened to a song from this band and just really dug it, so I grabbed this album. This is the new album from Sin Eater. I believe this came out, yeah, this is from 2015, so this is a brand new album. Killer artwork. I'm sorry, from Hammerhead, not the Sin Eater. I love the artwork. So Hammerhead is another of those early new wave of British heavy metal bands that put out a couple of singles and EPs, and then just kind of disappeared into obscurity. High Roller basically got back together with the band and started releasing their albums, their work again. Really good new wave of British heavy metal. And again, High Roller just doing what they do. This one is on clear vinyl. And then real nice insert here. And then of course that's got the High Rollers catalog sheet in there. This is one I highly recommend picking up though for all of you guys that are into new wave of British heavy metal. Just a really killer album from beginning to end. Next up, we have Act of Defiance. So this is the band with Chris Broderick and Sean Drover from Megadeth. This is their new band. It's also got Henry Derrick, that's who this is signed by. This is signed by Henry. Henry Derrick was the singer for Scar the Martyr. He's also a member of the YouTube vinyl community, so if you're a member of the YouTube VC page, he's on there posting all the time. Really cool cat. He sent out a message to everybody that he had gotten a couple of copies. This was real limited. I think there's, this one's on black vinyl. I think there's 300 pressed on pumpkin orange and 200 pressed on black vinyl, or vice versa. But Metal Blade did a real limited pressing of this on vinyl of 500 albums. And then it's also got Matt from, I can't remember what band he was in. But definitely a super group. Killer album. I really like this album from beginning to end. Henry sounds really good on here. And obviously Chris Broderick and Sean just kill it. But I highly recommend picking this one up. If you can find it on vinyl, grab it. If not, grab the CD. You can also try messaging Henry, and he may still have copies. Like I said, he was he offered up signed copies to everybody in the VC if they ordered them direct through him. So next up, a little bit of Spooky Tooth, The Last Puff. This was actually the last album from Spooky Tooth's original, I don't want to say original lineup. The band broke up after this album. They ended up getting together a few albums later, a few years later. This is a really killer album, though. This is the only one that says featuring Mike Harrison, and I think the rift between Mike Harrison and the rest of the band is kind of what caused all of this. All albums before this were just Spooky Tooth. All albums after this were also just Spooky Tooth. What's up, VC? Sorry about that. I got interrupted, and I've been having some technical difficulties with the iPad here, but I think I got it worked out. I think we left off on Spooky Tooth. Like I was mentioning, a few of the songs on here are covers. Only 2 of the songs on this album were actually written by the band. The rest were either written for them or, like I said, they were covers. There's a cover of I Am the Walrus on here that's awesome. That by itself is enough reason to go out and buy this album. But of the 7 songs, 5 of them on here are really killer. Just a really good listen from beginning to end. If you run across it, grab a copy. Excuse me. Next up is probably one of the most important bands you've never heard of. And that's the original Skid Row. This is their second album, 34 Hours. The reason I talk about their importance is their connection to Thin Lizzy. They're a killer band by themselves, don't get me wrong. But this is Phil Lynot's first band. He didn't record any full lengths with them. They let him go before that. However, he released, I believe, 2 45s with the band, both of which are kind of hard to find, a little bit expensive when you do run across them. But just a killer album. This, I believe, is the first album with their new guitarist, a 16-year-old named Gary Moore. Yes, that Gary Moore from, again, Thin Lizzy. He would go on a couple years after this and join Thin Lizzy, replacing Eric Bell, who then later played with Skid Row for a little while. And for those of you wondering about the name, Gary Moore owned the name of the band. He ended up with the rights somehow. I don't know if prior members died or what happened, but somehow Gary Moore ended up owning the rights to the name. From what I read, Bon Jovi was going to actually buy the rights, and Bon Jovi was going to be called Skid Row. Then at the last minute, they decided not to and passed up on it. And then Sebastian Bach and crew decided to buy the name for, I believe, it was $25,000 that they paid for the rights to the name Skid Row, which is a killer. I think that's an awesome name for a hard rock or heavy metal band. Any of the early Skid Rows definitely worth picking up. And speaking of Thin Lizzy, Vagabonds of the Western World. This is by far my favorite Thin Lizzy album. I cannot get enough of this. I've heard it 200 or 300 times, and this is just one of those albums I could play over and over again and never get tired of. This was really a transitional period for them. This is when they really started to display that sound that would make them famous. This is pre-Gary Moore. This is with Eric Bell on guitar. This is when they were still a trio. Just a killer album beginning to end. I love this album. Eric Bell is amazing on this album. Phil Lynot's bass playing is these guys are at their best. And about Eric Bell, you know, everybody talks about how good Gary Moore is, and I'm a big fan of Gary Moore, don't get me wrong, but I was reading that the big thing back when Eric Bell left the band was that it took 2 guitarists to fill the spot of Eric Bell, which was true. It became a 4-piece band after Eric Bell left. They brought in 2 guitarists. You know, and then that famous double guitar attack was solidified, but Eric Bell was absolutely amazing. Highly, highly recommend grabbing this album if you don't have it. This is a repress from last year. It sounds amazing. Definitely worth grabbing. It's not an expensive repress. $22 you can find it for. This next band, this is kind of a weird one. They kind of fall between genres, I guess. Some people consider them deathcore. I don't. I've heard them called melodic deathcore, which makes no sense to me, because if they're a melodic band, then it kind of gets them out of that whole core sound. But it's just a killer album. I don't like anything that they put out after this. This is more melodic death metal, in my opinion, than deathcore. And this is also one of those bands that at this time the deathcore community couldn't stand. They called it melodic death metal. The death metal band called melodic deathcore. I mean, it was just a really weird thing where they kind of fell in between. I ran across this album by accident back when it came out in 2008, and this was always on. This was a favorite of mine in the gym. I really liked listening to this when I was lifting weights. Definitely worth checking out, though. Like I said, to me it's more melodic death metal than deathcore, but there are 1 or 2 songs on here that have that deathcore sound, but still, killer album. This next one was an absolute surprise to me. I grabbed it because it was $3 or $4, and I've heard Scott talk about the band quite a bit. I was familiar with them, but the songs what I've heard from the band wasn't that good. It was very poppy, hard rock, pop metal sounding. But I took a chance with this, and man, I'm glad I did, because this album absolutely blew me away. Beginning to end, this is a perfect album. Just killer, hard rock, borderline metal. This is Silent Screams from Rez, aka the Resurrection Band. Really, this album blew me away. I played this thing 3 times in a row, and I actually may throw this on again when we're done here. Just like I said, that was a perfect album. If you run across it, grab it. Definitely worth having. Next up, I ran across this for like $10 at one of my local stores. It had what looked like a deep scratch, but for $10 I took a chance. Other than that, it was in mint condition, and I'm glad I did, because the scratch is superficial. It looks like a big deal. You can't hear it at all. It doesn't affect the play at all. This is Last Rites from Pentagram. This was 2010, 2011. I love this album beginning to end. I was really blown away by this. Definitely worth picking up. So this next one. This is kind of in the same category as Skid Row, however. This is probably the best metal band that never made it big, and I've never understood it. This is a band that's been putting out albums since this one in '81, I believe. I believe it was '81 when this came out. Don't quote me on that. But this has been one of the most consistent metal bands, period. The stuff they're putting out now is just as good as the stuff they were putting out in the early '80s. They've got a couple of really high points, a couple of low points, but it's all been really consistent heavy metal. I didn't have any of their stuff on vinyl. I want to get their whole discography on vinyl, and this was the start of that. This is Invasion from Manila Road. This album is very raw. I've read a lot of bad reviews about it. I think this awesome is awesome. Or excuse me, I think this album is awesome. Mark Shelton is one of the most amazing guitarists. He never makes any kind of lists of great guitarists. He blows away 90% of the heavy metal guitar players and hard rock guitar players out there, hands down. This is a rough recording, you know. It was recorded, it was a low budget recording. This is a High Roller repress. They did a really good job of cleaning up the sound and remastering it. Beginning to end though, the stories, Mark Shelton's an amazing storyteller. His lyrics have always been the high point in guitar playing. And they start out with his very first album. It's just a phenomenal album. I don't know that this would be the starting point. I would check out maybe Crystal Logic first, or even their most recent album that just came out a few months ago. And then work your way to this one. But I absolutely love this album. Again, this is one of the High Roller represses, and as always, High Roller did a killer job on this. This one's on a blue translucent vinyl. It also comes with a bunch of other stuff. This is a little card that kind of talks about the... I'm sorry, yeah, this is just kind of a really cool insert. Then you got this little card here that shows the original artwork and kind of tells a story of the artwork, why it was changed, what was changed. Just really nice, really well done in High Roller fashion. Again, Manila Road, if you like heavy metal, you need to check out Manila Road. They seriously have been, with the exception of like a 3-year hiatus they took in the 90s when they split up for a short time. Other than that, they've been putting out solid music consistently since 1981. Just an amazing, amazing band. Sorry, let me get this put away. And keeping it with High Roller, I'll show you. This is going to be the last one I'm showing. I've looked everywhere for this and was so glad to finally run across it. As soon as I heard this was coming out, I was super stoked. Greeno showed a copy of it, and then I was looking everywhere. I couldn't find it anywhere. Literally for the last 3 or 4 months, I've been looking for this album. And it finally popped up. Hell's Headbangers ended up getting a couple of extra copies. This is the High Roller repress of Exodus, Bonded by Blood. This is, I mean, one of the absolute classic thrash albums. Definitely in my top 10 thrash albums of all time. Just amazing from beginning to end. Here's the, it comes in this really nice polyline sleeve, but it also comes with a copy of the original sleeve as well with the lyrics. And then comes with a poster of that iconic artwork. If you are into heavy metal or thrash and you don't have a copy of Bonded by Blood, you're just doing it wrong. I would definitely go out and get a copy. This High Roller repress sounds amazing. I think it sounds better than the original. I have an original pressing over there. I think this one, they did a better job on this. High Roller, man, they're just doing it right, man. You know, Greeno's always talking it up, and for very good reason. I've only had one High Roller record that I had a problem with, and it was replaced within a couple of days. So, I mean, it was a non-issue. and that was just that it was warped. It got warped in shipping. You know, that stuff happens. But that's it, VC. That's my update. Hopefully I'll be doing another one pretty soon. I've got quite a bit more to show. Take care, VC. I love you.